Welcome to our session today to discuss adaptive reuse in senior living. So we're looking forward to sharing some of our thoughts and experiences with you. So this session is titled The Next Chapter, Adaptive Reuse Conversions into Senior Living Communities. So we're going to be discussing some general thoughts and expertise based on adaptive reuse, but we're also going to be digging into a case study of a former Marriott Residence Inn on Long Island and how we converted it to an independent living community. So the developer on the project is Capital Seniors Housing. They're based out of Washington, D.C. I am with Meyer Senior Living Studio. We're the interior design and architecture firm on the project. So Meyer provides architecture, interior design, master planning, and FF&E procurement services focused on the senior living market. We're about a 70-person firm located in Ardmore, Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia. And Chelsea is the operator of the community, and they service seniors across the care continuum throughout New Jersey, New York, and soon to be Pennsylvania. So here are our learning objectives today for the session. So first we have how to identify specific building types and distressed properties that could be adapted into senior living. Second, we're going to learn how to navigate building and life safety codes for senior living, and then the steps needed to meet those local and state regulations. And three, distinguish the innovative trends, architectural design elements, priorities, and some of the challenges that could come along with adaptive reuse projects. So you can see our agenda listed here, but we just wanted to take a few moments to introduce myself and the other speakers that are joining us here today. So my name again is Shannon Remaley. I'm a principal and practice leader at Meyer. So I've been with Meyer about 8 years and 20 years experience designing for seniors in addition to hospitality, healthcare, and multifamily environments. So my focus at Meyer and really on this project was on the interior layout as well as the design and how the built environment affects our holistic health and the human experience when inside of it. I'll pass it over to Dan.
Thank you. My name is Dan King. I'm also a principal and practice leader at Meyer, overseeing the architectural side of our senior living studio. My role on this project was to interface with the township, review the codes, make sure that the building elements and the renovations that were taking place would be in compliance with local authorities' regulations along with the state licensing requirements.
And I am Rachel Anderson, and I am the Executive Director here at the Residence of Plainview, the former Marriott. It's an exciting project, has been an exciting project. I am with Chelsea as the management company. We run 27 properties between New York, New Jersey, and one going up in Pennsylvania. And I've been with Chelsea for over 15 years.
All right, so defining adaptive reuse, what does that mean? And really, it boils down to what you see on your screen, the repurposing of an existing structure for a new use other than which it was originally built or designed for. On your right, you see one of the more significant examples out there in the world is the Louvre, which started out as a palace and was converted to a museum. In our instance, we took a hotel and converted it to independent living residences. Why does adaptive reuse make sense for seniors? There's pros and cons to this kind of development. For one, we all know and are aware of the demand for senior housing is growing. The population is aging. There's a lack of inexpensive and available land to start new projects ground up. As we've all seen, construction costs are going through the roof. And so having an existing building that's already built and in place can be very attractive in terms of upfront cost. And then that also leads to speed the market. If you don't have to build it, if you don't have to take it through entitlement, if you don't have to go through land development, you can open up your building and serve the community much sooner. Post-COVID, there's going to be a lot of distressed properties that have not survived the economic downturn. So now's an opportunity to look for those distressed hotels or catering facilities or venues that have not made it through this unfortunate time period and take advantage of the opportunity to offer that as a new purpose for your communities. I also mentioned that it's popular when you have a building that people have grown up with and has been part of the fabric of a community for a long time to see if it's no longer functioning as its previous use to give it new life. We have found that local communities appreciate that. These can be very gratifying and neat projects. Slows the urban sprawls, and of course, with the right building, a lot of your amenities are already in place. So that's again one less thing you have to do. On the downside, not all buildings are suited for senior living or this type of use, and so you need to really do a careful evaluation of that, which we can get into later. If the building's older, ADA compliance, creating accessibility might be problematic if there's no elevators, if there's a lot of stairs. Historic or older buildings can particularly be a problem. Unpredictability, anyone who's gone through a renovation, maybe you've renovated your house, you know how many things can pop up unforeseen. There's always a danger of what you might uncover during a renovation. Grandfathering existing conditions sounds like a reasonable proposition, but is it? Is it appropriate? Is it possible? With keeping senior needs in mind, grandfathering certain conditions may not be in your best interest. And so, how much of the code do we need to abide by, and what types of things need to be modified in order to meet that code? You need to understand the construction type may not be, again, appropriate for your use. And then the quality of location, is it in a good place where people are going to see it, know about it, and where the demographics are appropriate for your operation. This next slide shows 6 examples of different types of adaptive reuse. The one on the upper left is Ravenswood Hospital. It's located in Chicago. It had sat abandoned for many years. It was an eyesore, but thanks to some grants and other incentives offered by the city of Chicago, they were able to provide supportive living for low-income seniors as well as independent living apartments. The next one to the right is Regency Palms. This is located in the heart of Long Beach, California, and was a historic icon and one of the first high-rise office buildings there in the heart of the city. It went vacant, and in 2018, the owners repurposed it and reopened it, much to the pleasure of the local residents, to an assisted living memory care operated by Meridian Senior Living.
So the one in your upper right-hand corner is the Springside School Apartments. That's in Burlington Township, New Jersey. As Dan mentioned earlier about adaptive reuse, and the community could really appreciate them or like them, I think this is a great example where this was an old school, which they then converted into senior apartments. So it can carry a lot of local and historical value to the community.
The lower left project is a project Meyer actually did, and this was a competition in which we took garden-style apartments and converted it into a multi-generational community. So repurposing something that was old, built in the 50s, and renewing, revigorating it to enliven it with multi-generational living. We actually won first place for that.
And then the bottom middle is the Water Market Brooklyn Heights. So that's located in Brooklyn, New York. So we talked about historic elements of buildings, which this certainly has, but even more so, it's an iconic building. And so just ways to really capitalize on what that means for that local area. In addition, this area in Brooklyn, to find undeveloped land would be very difficult. So another great advantage to a property like that.
And then finally, right here in our own Philadelphia, is the Presser Senior Apartments. This was an older, iconic apartment building, historic. So all the details were maintained and was converted to senior living for musicians. So this is an example where they took a specific program and a theme and said, we're gonna convert this into independent living apartments or senior apartments where musicians can come and collaborate and continue their work and do things together in community. How do you go about selecting a building that's appropriate for senior living? I think you want to start with, of course, looking at the price and pro forma. Does the cost of the purchasing the property and then the cost of renovation, when you add those up, does it give it the give you the ROI that you're looking for to be successful. Is it in a location that is visible, has good demographics? You need to do your marketing homework just like your market study, just like you would with any new project, to make sure that it's appropriate, that you have the right demographics in the area, the right household mixes, income levels, and so forth. Code and use compliances, we're going to talk about that on the next slide. Programming and operations. Is the building set up, is the configuration and layout of the existing spaces and the units work for what your program is about and how you want to operate a senior living facility? And then existing conditions. I mean, this is probably the most important one. I mean, we feel and highly recommend that you hire a third-party inspector or third-party engineers to really do a full building evaluation, including environmental, because you just don't know what's hiding behind the walls. So then jumping to navigating building and life safety codes, we've come to the most exciting part of our presentation, and I'll be spending the next 30 minutes talking about building codes. No, I'm just kidding. But making the right decision about what code to use is really the $1 million question for these projects. And literally it could cost you $1 million depending on what code you decide to move with. And you really have some choices here. You could go straight International Building Code, or you could use the existing building code, depending on the level of renovation that you're providing. It really depends on the percentage of the building that you're going to be altering. If it was previously apartments, or in our case a hotel, and you're converting it to residential for seniors, then there may not be a whole lot of alteration required, in which case using the International Building Code might make sense, because it is less it forces, well, let me start over. The International existing building code doesn't have as stringent requirements with regard to taking some of the elements of your building and upgrading them to new code standards. It does allow you to grandfather a lot of conditions depending on what the percentage of area you're touching within your community. The IEBC also allows you to use the performance compliance method, which means that if there are any conditions that would just be impossible to bring to today's standards, you are able to offer alternative measures that would make the building safer. So maybe it's adding sprinklers. You see this in historic buildings where there may be things that you don't want to touch, or there's details that you don't want to lose or ruin, and so you use this compliance method to get around that. And especially if you have assemblies that don't currently meet today's UL design standards, you can use alternative methods of creating fire-safe assemblies as long as you get the approval of the local code official, which the IEBC allows. However, if it's a change of occupancy, you really need to take a look a little harder at the requirements under that section of the IEBC. If it's a change of use, for instance, in the example previously, if it was a hospital turning into independent living, there are a number of things under the change of use that force you to use the IBC, particularly when it comes to means of egress, fire alarm, fire protection, electrical systems, some of the structural elements. At which point you need to, decide, is the International Building Code more appropriate for this particular project? And really, if you're really touching almost every area of the building, you need to use the IBC. The other thing you want to consider is, these are communities for seniors, and so there's different varying degrees of mobility, different levels of acuity. So even if you might be grandfathered under the IEBC, is it appropriate for the type of individual occupying your building? We found that it's very important to interface with the township early, and that would be with the town planning board and the building or the code enforcement officer and the building inspectors. But the township officials are going to be the ones that are most familiar with the building within their township. More so than the design team or the owner purchasing the building, or you as an operator. And so they're going to be able to tell you some things that have been an issue prior in the building, what code things or fire safety things have concerned them in the past, what they might like to see upgraded moving forward. They're probably going to help you make that decision between the IBC and the IEBC, on how far to take the improvements as it pertains to life safety. Are there other codes that they're going to enforce? Are they going to enforce the energy code? A lot of times with existing buildings, you're exempt from the energy code. However, depending on what kind of renovation you're doing, the township may want you to take a look at some of the features in there and incorporate them into your project. I know at Plainview we had there were 2 pools, and this particular township had their own ordinance separate from the code that just addressed pools and some of the things that they wanted in terms of covers and alarms and so forth. That had we not spoken with them, we may not have become aware of them until too late. And then you really understanding what their inspection process is, what kind of inspections they want, how frequent, how much advance notice do we need to give them in order to come in and take a look at some things. These are things the contractor should be aware of, but just helps move the construction moving forward smoothly.
So as Dan walks us through some of the codes and the decisions that we need to make and how that will determine how an adaptive reuse moves forward, we also want to be looking at the existing conditions and what the programmatic needs of what the adaptive use will be, what your local market expectations are, and what your target market is, and how the building may or may not fit those requirements to make it successful. So this wheel here really represents what Meyer believes is going to motivate how senior living continues to evolve and how it shapes in the years to come. And so the motivators are surrounding the wheel. You can see them there. We have sustainability, intergenerational, recreation, community, caregivers, technology, and health and wellness. So we won't dig into all of these, but just to touch on a couple briefly. Health and wellness has been and continues to be a major influencer in senior living. This, past year has certainly pushed the greater population to really have a heightened sense of awareness of how the built environment can affect our physical health. But as we know, it's much more than our physical health. We have to look at health, more holistically, including social health, mental health, spiritual health, and so forth. So, when we're looking at spaces, we really want to design to connect all these aspects of health, really embrace our inherent connection to outdoors and encourage and foster healthy lifestyles. So, another major influence we see is recreation, which of course ties to health and wellness as we look at our social health. So many of these aspects, overlap each other. But you're looking at, the social aspects of a senior living community. That's really a major part of why a lot of residents or families choose to live in a community. And so we really want to look at how people socialize, how we can foster a healthy lifestyle, and all the different, varying levels of socialization that can happen within a community. So those are just a couple examples, but you really want to take into account all the aspects of how the community will function when you're looking at the existing space and, can this work for us, and what modifications do we have to make to it to make it work?
All right, thank you, Shannon. And now we're going to get into our case study for the residents of Plainview. This is a project that we're very proud of. We think it's unique, and it's been very successful, and we're excited to be sharing it with you today. Here's an outline of what we'll be discussing over the next few minutes. To site and location. So there we are. The pin on the left shows that the community was located right in the center of Long Island. Great location, right off the exit of the Seaford Oyster Bay Expressway, which runs the length of Long Island north-south. Good visibility from the main road, and as you can see, just to the north of it, there's the Plainview Hospital conveniently located in case there are ever emergencies. History and overview. The building is 145,000 square feet. Actually, this building goes back probably 50 years old. It actually started as an elementary school, believe it or not. And then in the 80s, it was converted to apartments. And then Marriott came in in the 90s and turned it into a residential inn, as you see there, and then sold to our client, Capital Seniors Housing, back in 2018. There were 153 units, a lot of them studios, that we converted to 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartments, so that we had a final total of 116. There are a lot of existing amenities internal to this community that you'll see in the presentation as we move through it. The units were pretty good size. A lot of them had full kitchens. The studios themselves were 300 to 450 square feet, so when you combine them, it gave you really nice, generous sized 1- and 2-bedroom apartment units. It was already residential, so there was no rezoning, no land. There's really nothing more environmental than taking an existing building and repurposing it to something else. And then outside, there were lots of already existing exterior amenities, including walking paths, the pool deck, a putting green, pergolas, a basketball court. So really, it was a well-appointed exterior experience around the building. This slide shows the community shown from above. On the upper right-hand corner is the entrance drive into the building. Immediately to the left, as you come up the driveway, you'll see a drive curving around into the building. There's actually an underground garage in that L-shaped portion of the building that could accommodate 30 cars, and then you have additional surface parking above. On the inside corner there, where you see that kind of curving canopy shape coming out meeting the drive, is where the drop-off is in the main entrance. On the lower left-hand corner, you can see the pool, and then the large terrace and deck there that had existing cabanas and an outdoor bar with an outdoor grill and a fire pit and lots of sitting areas and a koi pond and with a waterfall. It was just really beautiful space out there for large gatherings and parties and things. And then to the right of the outdoor pool, you'll see the white roof. That's where the indoor pool is. So right there you have, the opportunity you can swim inside, you can swim outside, and then all season or all year round you have the opportunity to do swimming exercises and therapy. If you look at the center of the building, that big white area, you'll see 4 strips of what are skylights, and those we repurposed and took advantage of for our third floor community spaces, which we'll take a look at as we get further into the presentation. Schedule-wise, the building came to Capital Seniors Housing attention in the late fall of 2018. At that point, we went in and walked the building with the owner. They did their own preliminary building assessments, which again, in hindsight, they probably should have had some outside independent sources take a look, do a deeper dive into some of the systems. By January, we'd surveyed the building, and we were producing demolition plans based on our schematic layout of what the building wanted to be in terms of how the amenity spaces would lay out and the units and so forth. We got those into the township early so that the GC could go in and start their work on the demo while we were wrapping up the construction drawings for permit. And that was just a way to foreshorten the schedule so we can get residents in quicker. By April, the GC was pricing it. The drawings were into the town for building permit, and by May, construction began. It was going to be a 10 to 11 month construction process, but of course we all know that was disrupted by COVID. Long Island was hit pretty hard early on, and so all non-essential construction was stopped for about 3 months. And then even after resumed, the workforce levels were about half of what they had been prior to COVID starting. So that really pushed the schedule out into late summer, early fall. Inspections began in October. In November, we had to, the building inspector came in. There were a number of existing cooling tower and a generator that needed to get re-permitted, and so that took some time there at the end to get that resolved. The Department of Health came in and recertified the commercial kitchen that was in place. But by December, we had our certificate of occupancy, and in early 2021, open for residents. It was actually a very well-maintained hotel. When we first went in there, we were very impressed with the condition and the attention that the current owner spent maintaining it. And so we really thought we were getting a good solid building. But as we started to get into it, there was mold found behind wall covering that we removed in some of the resident units, particularly around the PTACs. The exterior vertical panel boards were rotting in a lot of places that once we started to get behind those, the PTACs themselves had mold in them and were not in as good a shape as we thought when we did the initial inspection. So those had to be replaced as well. And then, as I indicated earlier, there were a lot of studios, and so one of the goals was, look, we're serving the residential community. These are retirees who are leaving their homes for a new place to live, and so we want to give them as much space as possible. And so it was nice that the current studios were pretty large. I mean, they were 300 to 350 square feet. So by combining them into 1 bedrooms and 2 bedrooms, you got a decent sized unit for a 1 bedroom. There were larger studios that were more in the 400, 450 range that we combined to make the 2 bedrooms, so they weren't too small. And then the units themselves, some of them did not have ovens. None of them had. There were laundry facilities on each floor, but each unit did not have their own laundry room, so we had to add those in as one of the goals. They had to be ventless so that we didn't have to run exhaust across the apartment and out to the exterior and poke through the exterior wall. The town was difficult to work with, so there were a number of areas that we had to address that were not in the scope. Made it a little bit difficult on the client in terms of cost because of the additional work that had to be done. Existing conditions, here you have pictures of the exterior. Again, the building was in pretty good condition. The exterior was an insulation system that was painted kind of a dingy color. You see the vertical panel board in the balcony areas that we later discovered was rotting on the back side that we had to replace. And so what we ended up doing was repainting all of the exterior installation system, kind of whitewashing it, and removing the vertical panel board and replacing it with this midnight blue horizontal cement board paneling to really make those balcony areas pop. And so we think this really brightened up the building, gave it a little more dynamic, contemporary feel, and it doesn't make it feel as old as it once did.
Great. So here we thought we'd share with you some of the existing floor plans we had. Dan mentioned earlier how we did not have electronic files. So this is an example of what we started with. As Meyer did our survey, we did hire a third-party consultant to come in and do digital measurements, help us input it into Revit and really get that going. So it's important to look at your surveying and Revit input schedule ahead of a project. It was a large time investment in the beginning of this project, but definitely worthwhile as we continue down the project. Another element that we did here is we did use a 360 camera of all the existing spaces that then we were able to use when we went back to the office and did our design and documentation, which was very helpful as well if you are not local to the project. So this represents the overall first floor plan post the renovation. You can see some of the areas that Dan pointed out earlier on the site, such as the outdoor pool and the courtyard areas and that front entrance. So the amenities here are really concentrated in the center of the building, and you can see the apartments are really branching out here on the wings or arms of the building. So this here enlarged plan really highlights those central amenities. The building really provided us ample square footage and great locations for the amenities within the existing building. So that was great. So it was really us just going in and looking at what those spaces could become, what the adjacencies are or want to be, looking at our existing utilities, and really just considering, the type of flow and flexibility that was really going to enhance the operations of this building. Also, a challenge of some of the existing amenities is they are a bit landlocked in the building with no direct natural light. So as we're looking at the different programs and the adjacencies, we did look at and did move forward with taking some walls down or adding more glass to kind of bring some of that natural light. For example, the bistro, the natural light could bleed in from the lobby area since it didn't have direct natural light. So this here is our second floor. Again, the amenities are centrally located. We did create a main street or social hub here on the second floor that overlooks the first floor lobby. Also on this floor, you'll find the tech lounge and library. Again, enlarging that main street area in the blue that you see there. And that gray rectangle is the area that is open, that two-story lobby that looks down to the first floor. So it was really nice to have that two-story lobby because it really did activate the first floor and the second floor amenities together. And this is our third floor. This we had existing multi-purpose room and auditorium. So for the most part, we kept these spaces intact. We refinished them obviously and looked at some programmatic things about them, but we're hoping having these large spaces will really invite the outside community in and hopefully create some intergenerational mix. And here you can see the enlarged areas of those. This is where Dan mentioned earlier where we had the skylights in the large white portion of the site plan. These are the spaces that skylight, the multi-purpose room to the left there, and more of the brown tone. That's where those skylights were, which was great. So we'll go ahead and dive into some of our before and after pictures to give you an idea of how we did adapt this building for its new use as independent living. So this here is our existing two-story lobby on the first floor. As Dan mentioned earlier, while the property was wonderfully maintained, it was great to walk in and see that it was, it's an older building. It had dated finishes, lighting, and FF&E. So we looked at that throughout, as you'll see as we walk through the photographs. But one of the great things that this existing lobby had is it's a great large span. Again, it has that connection to the second floor. The high ceilings. So those were all elements that we wanted to maintain. And so when you look here at the after photograph here, while we did maintain the large open space and the high ceilings, we also wanted to adapt it to, the scale a bit. So when you go into a hotel, often the lobby is, a place of transit or very brief meetings or gatherings. But as residents walk in, we really wanted them to have a wow when they see this space, but also, this is their home. And so we wanted to bring that scale down a bit and make it more intimate. So we did that with the furniture layouts, having different zones of gathering with different seating types, but also with our two-story fireplace that we added here that you can see there close to the center of the room. And so that really adds a nice wow design feature. It helps break up the space and bring the scale down a little bit. And the fireplace is double-sided, so you can enjoy it on both sides. As far as the color palette goes, we did start with a nice neutral base of warm and cool colors mixed together, and then really add pops of color. And here in the lobby, we did do a high contrast dark trim to really highlight some of those great architectural details that came along with the building. So here's our before photograph of the bistro. Again, a dark dated interior. There was no natural light, so as I mentioned earlier, this was a room where we did take out an existing wall to further open it up into the lobby to let some of that natural light bleed in, as well as the activity. The bistro is often an area where we see the residents use it a lot, so we really wanted to engage the lobby area with the bistro area. Also, the bar here is very closed off. It's not senior friendly either. At the height that it's at, and it's not very flexible as the daily needs might shift of operations here. So as we look at renovating it, we did want to keep the plumbing on the wet wall. Being mindful of where utilities are is always something that we look at in a renovation or adaptive reuse to keep that budget in mind. Often the utilities can be worked with if you're mindful of it, to avoid unnecessary increases in budget. So you can see we opened up the bar area. We made a back bar and then more of an island area that's at more of a senior-friendly height. We did build off of the color scheme you see in the lobby, but focused on, popping that saturated blue you can see on the TV wall there, but continued with our nice neutral base and bright white trim and spaces. We did give the ceiling a new clean look, minimal detail to be cost-effective, but still very successful. As we look at the after pictures throughout the project, we did replace all the lighting throughout the community. You'll often see that lighting has a huge impact on a space. So it's definitely something that we advocate for in renovations. You can renovate everything below it, but oftentimes if the lighting isn't upgraded, you don't get the best impact of that. You also see in this bistro picture the barn door to the back, which does open up to the bar, which we'll look at in a couple slides. But before the renovation, this project had a lot of very closed off, small, isolated spaces, and so we really wanted to connect spaces more for flexibility and activation. So here's what the bistro lounge looked like before. As I just mentioned, tight, small spaces, almost a little claustrophobic as you're in here. Not very easy to navigate, especially for seniors. So we did go ahead and just open all of that up and create a bistro lounge off of the bistro area, really adding, diversity of seating types and just better flow here. As we look at the colors and the finishes, you'll see here, introducing different textures. We did pull from nature. You'll start to see as we walk through just patterns or finishes that are reminiscent of things that you'd find in nature, such as this nice textured wood wall that we incorporated with this more softer color palette. This here is the bar area that I had mentioned earlier that we had the barn door from the bistro going into. Again, looking at existing plumbing walls, we did keep it on that same wall, but we did centrally locate it. Again, it was much more closed off here, more of an older hospitality model where it was service side and those that are being serviced. But wanted to open it up, make it more inviting, really make this a destination space for the residents and their families to gather. We did add, again, a variety of textures. You'll see the brick veneer in here. Again, nice neutral palette with some pops of blue throughout it. We did mix our woods, so you have some light woods in the millwork and the dark in the FF&E and the nice parquet porcelain tile pattern. Here's our existing dining room. This does overlook the outdoor pool. So we did keep this in the same location because it was next to the commercial kitchen, which we wanted to maintain. But you can see the lighting of the space was very uneven and distracting. And in addition, the finishes were dark and dated, but there was really no diversity of color or tones or interest to the space. Also, the tables were all the same with no diversity in seating types or any of that. So here's your after photograph. You can see, we did improve the lighting with enhancements and replacements. The ceiling's really the same layout. It's just we, addressed it with finishes and the lighting. Also, some of the patterns and the finishes here are inspired by nature with its direct relationship to the outdoor pool in the courtyard, as I had mentioned. We also incorporated a variety of table sizes and types to accommodate different groupings of people. And it's hard to see here in this photograph, but in the far back right, we did add a visual barrier to where the entrance to the existing commercial kitchen is to add a little more high-end hospitality feel to take away direct view of the commercial kitchen. So here is a before and after of the fitness area. Again, going back to just very small, secluded, uninviting is what it had before. In a hotel versus independent living, health and wellness is really a major component of the services that you see in a senior living community. And we wanted to make sure that the space really communicated that. So this area, we did have a bit more construction to really create those type of spaces and add larger spaces that residents could enjoy for a wide variety of fitness activities. So this new space to the right is more in line with the philosophy of the developer and the operator and the importance of health and wellness for the residents in their communities. And you can see it overlooks the indoor pool, which is quite nice. Speaking of indoor pool, here's our indoor pool that the fitness overlooks. So this is often a space we don't really have the luxury to have in new developments, so it was great to have it here. And I think as Rachel shared, the residents really seem to be enjoying it, so that's wonderful. So here, we wanted to keep the space intact, to just upgrade it to have a more welcoming space. Dan mentioned earlier some of the surprises that you can have in adaptive reuse. Not as major as some of the others we had, but here, for example, we had some, rusted columns where we had to shore up with the new steel and concrete at the base. It just goes to some of the unknowns that you'll find. So here's our existing library, which is in a great location on the second floor, again, overlooking that 2-story lobby. So it really just needed to have new life designed into it, kind of breathe some new life into it. So here you can see the renovated photograph here. Again, lighting making a drastic difference in the space. We did take away some of the coffered ceilings that were also aging the space and just did a nice clean solid ceiling here. Added a variety of flexible seating types that we incorporated. You can see we got a little playful with the colors in here. We really took all the accents that you would find throughout the community and incorporated them into the books and accessories and the millwork that goes around the space. When you look at budget, this is a good example of how, you try to keep what you can that is existing that makes sense. So these are all the existing bookshelves. We just painted them and created upgrades around them. This here is the Main Street area on the second floor that I had mentioned earlier at the floor plans, really a portion of the building that's loaded with the amenities surrounding this central hub corridor that you see here. Again, overlooking the first floor lobby, the 2-story space. So we really wanted to add purpose to this space. This was a really good example of just dead space in the existing community, and so how could we activate it better? What we did with it as the Main Street design, the photograph on your right-hand side, is how we repurposed it. So in addition, and then the lower left picture is the yoga room that is off of this Main Street corridor. So in addition to yoga, you would find the beauty salon, the barbershop, the card room, maker space, and the sewing room off of here. So the central area is really multifunctional with tables and chairs. You have a hospitality station, some lounge seating further down the corridor here. So we're hopeful that this will be an area where residents really come to gather, perhaps while waiting for a yoga class to start or visiting for a drink at the hospitality station after visiting the beauty salon. Here are some of the other amenity spaces off of this Main Street. You'll see here our beauty salon in the top left. The lower left is your barbershop, and over to your right is the makerspace or art studio. Jump up to the third floor. So this is your multi-purpose room that was existing. So we kept this space for the most part in the form that it was in. It was really just a fit and finish upgrade. Looked at adding millwork to make it more purposeful, some accents to make it a more engaging and lively space. So as I mentioned earlier, it's a space we're really hoping that'll bring the outside community in to engage with the residents. This side, it does have an existing divider here that you see that we did keep. And so one side of the space is a multi-purpose room, which you see pictured here, more of an activity space. And these are the skylights that Dan mentioned earlier on the site plan. On the photograph to the left, they actually had existing shades on them to close them, which is why it looks dark there. But we went ahead and opened up those skylights and really let that natural light in. And this here is the other side of this multi-purpose room, which we designed more for a theater space. Both are cohesively designed and flexible to be one large space, but easily divided to be two purposeful and different functions. Here we have the corridors. And so the corridors here are a bit long, so we wanted to find ways, to not only dress them up with new finishes and lighting and so forth, but really how to make them a little more engaging and to give some visual breaks to the length that you do see here. So as you see here, this is an example of how we did that. We took some of these dead spaces off of the corridors and really activated them with purposeful arrangements. This is a TV lounge and game area. We talked earlier a little bit about the different levels of socialization that might happen in a senior living community. I think this is a good example of while we have their apartments and while we have some of those, more public front-facing amenity spaces we just looked at, it's nice to have something in between. You can step out of your apartment and maybe gather with some of those that live around you or family coming in for a little bit more of an intimate setting.
Okay, looking at the resident units, on your screen is an example of a new one-bedroom unit. So this is an example where we took 2 studios and opened it up to create one large one-bedroom. If you can imagine on the left there's that recess there. There were 2 entrances to 2 separate studios, and then off the point of that alcove all the way down the center to the exterior wall was the demising wall between the 2 studios. And so, each studio had its own kitchenette and bathroom and closet and just had an open bedroom layout. And so what we did was remove that center room, closed off one of the doors and you entered in. We kept the kitchenette on one side. We added an island because in this case there wasn't an oven in this particular unit. So while it had stovetop, we needed to add the oven and then a little counter space that residents could work off of. Maintain one of the closets, maintain both bathrooms, converted one closet to a laundry room with stacking, ventless washer and dryer, and then just only had to build out the closets and the bedroom, those few walls to complete the one bedroom layout. And so really what it, left you with was this nice, gracious open area for the living space that allowed you to, do a variety of furniture configurations as to your choice and, provide an area for eating. And then you have that very nice balcony right there off the center of your living room.
These are just some photographs. You can see the before in the upper left-hand side of what it looked like, and then afterwards on the right photograph over there. So these are photographs of our model units that we did for the community as they're looking to market. And these are some of the other unit types, a variety of the spaces. You can see the kitchenette area in this one, which we did provide new millwork for.
Due to Shannon's and her team's work and Dan and his team's work, I have the pleasure of working here every day in this building. The community is at this point 30% leased up. So that's where we are with the lease up, which is exciting for us. And I think these pictures really speak to the space that Shannon spoke about in her presentation. The top left picture is us welcoming in one of our new residents, just in February. So really making them feel welcome, utilizing a funny story, utilizing the hallways. We do a big red carpet for them when they do come in. So they get a big kick out of that. So the red carpet, the ribbon cutting, however, that's how we use some of the space in the hallways. We use that space to our advantage to really make them on a warm welcome, just to set off the tone for the building. The sports bar is in the bottom picture. That room is utilized often. It's a place to gather both for residents and families. Happy hour we have every day. That's a well-attended event. But again, it's just really utilizing space, of which I have a ton of in this building, again, to my advantage. The aqua classes are big and another advantage to this building, because most independent livings do not have the indoor pool. So I know that it was a long ride for Dan and his team to get through some of the inspections. It again helps my residents out. The use of space, the multipurpose room upstairs is a use of space for me, for the residents, as well as for bringing the town into the building. So again, it's more exposure. It's a way to involve the town in the building here, in the community, have them part of the community. And my residents then, again, share a lot with the outside part of Plainview in general and Syosset. So it's a well-running program that we do that. But again, we use the space upstairs for that. So it's a great space, a lot of space just to have people into the building. That's really it from my perspective, just as the operator. So I think it's important, sitting on this side of it now, really to have the residents' feedback as they look at it moving into their new home. What can we do differently? What should we have done differently? Did we take everything into consideration for the senior environment that they're living?
So quickly to wrap things up, I think on the architecture side, takeaways are you need to do your homework. You need to understand the building, its previous use, its construction, and really study which code is going to be to your benefit. And then engage the township early, because I think they have a lot of influence on what needs to happen with these buildings in order to bring it up to current safety regulations.
On the interior side, some takeaways we had was really, spend some time in the building, look at your existing conditions, determine what can stay and what can't stay for its new purpose and how existing would meet new. Second, look at your market expectations, look at where your project is, take cues and inspiration from the local area and really study that so that you're producing a product that's really going to thrive.
From the operational side, it's really about the resident experience when they're in this building. And the second takeaway that I have on that is the family and town engagement with the residents, again, while using space in this building.
So thanks everyone today for attending our session, walking through some of the takeaways from an adaptive reuse and digging into our residents at Plainview with us. At this time, we're happy to take any questions that anyone may have for myself, Dan, or Rachel. And thank you again.